The first warning wasn't an explosion or a siren. It was the light. A pale green shimmer rippled across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon like someone had brushed the stars with poison. The villagers of Norvale stopped what they were doing and stared upward, their voices quieting into murmurs of fear and disbelief. Children clung to their parents and elders whispered prayers to gods long forgotten. None had ever seen the heavens behave this way. Elias, the town's blacksmith, felt the iron tongs slip from his hand as he stepped into the street. His forge still burned behind him, casting flickering shadows on the cobblestones. But all warmth within him fled when the green sky fractured into shards of light like glass breaking in slow motion. Something enormous was pushing through the atmosphere. Not a meteor, not a comet. Something shaped, angled, and built. Flames licked along its sides as it tore the clouds apart in its descent. The ground trembled under Norvale's feet, a low rolling quake that felt like the earth itself was gasping for breath. The object struck the far ridge with the force of a falling mountain. Shockwave raced down into the valley, snapping trees, crumbling stone, and tossing Elias against the wall of his own forge. When the dust finally settled, the villagers saw the ridge burning not with fire, but with a strange humming glow that stung the eyes, and something was moving inside it. Elias and a dozen villagers scrambled toward the ridge. Their breath caught in their throats as the reality settled in. It was no falling star. It was a ship. Its surface was jagged and blackened by re-entry, broken in places, but here and there, plates of alien metal gleamed coldly in the strange light. A hatch hung open, twisted from the crash, and inside blue light pulsed like a living heartbeat. Then came the sound, not footsteps, scrapes, and shuffles. Something dragged itself from the wreck, its body glinting unnaturally, limbs jointed at impossible angles, eyes glowing molten gold. The villagers froze. The creature's gaze swept over them, intelligent and pained all at once, but spoke a voice like wind through dead leaves, urgent but unintelligible. No one moved. Then a second shape stumbled out, smaller, breathing hard, skin smoother and shimmering softly. Trembling hands clutching a glowing device, it pointed at the larger one and made a sharp gesture. Elias somehow understood as a call for help. Before anyone could react, the hills answered with a roar unlike anything the villagers had heard alow. Long growled that wasn't from the aliens. From the tree line emerged a massive predator, black and silver fur, shimmering in the eerie light, jaws wide enough to swallow a man whole. The aliens froze. The larger one stumbled, a dark fluid leaking from a wound in its side. The smaller alien screamed not, with fear but defiance, and raised the glowing device. A burst of light shot out, striking the beast's chest. It staggered, but didn't fall. Instinct urged Elias to flee, but something stronger pulled him forward. He grabbed a burning brand from the wreck's edge and charged, shouting and swinging the fire like a weapon. The predator turned its yellow eyes toward him, narrowing. For one breathless moment, Elias thought he had just signed his death warrant. Then, from behind, the injured alien made a deep, resonant sound. Commanding, the predator froze and backed away. The villagers stared in disbelief. Elias realized the alien hadn't scared the predator off. It had ordered it to leave. The smaller alien collapsed beside the larger one, attempting to seal the wound with trembling fingers. Elias stepped closer, offering his hands. Hesitantly, the smaller alien pressed a strange tool into his grip. It hummed warmly against his skin, and when Elias applied it to the wound, the blackened flesh began to knit together before his eyes. Gasps echoed from the villagers. The larger alien's eyes locked on Elias. Then it spoke one word, in his own tongue. Human. Before Elias could ask how it knew, the ground shuddered again, not from the hills this time, but from the wreck. Something inside the ship was waking. A low, rhythmic pulse rolled out from the shattered vessel. Elias turned toward the hatch, where the blue light deepened into warning red. Symbols danced across the hull, shifting faster than the eye could follow. The smaller alien shouted and staggered toward the hatch, waving frantically for Elias to back away. A voice spilled from the wreck deep, metallic, layered in strange harmonics. Elias couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. It was giving orders. Shadows moved inside the darkness, too smooth, too precise to be living. 3 machines crawled out six-legged, man-sized, with metal claws scraping the earth. Their bodies glowed faintly from within, casting jagged shadows as their lenses scanned the crowd. One fixed on Elias. The machine didn't attack. Instead, it stepped forward, scanning him with pale light. Ilias's skin prickled as if the machine was peeling him open without touch. Then it emitted a sharp tone and extended a small, smooth sphere, faintly pulsing. Elias hesitated, but when his fingers closed around it, the machines withdrew and the red light shifted back to blue. The larger alien exhaled, relief almost audible in the sound. Elias had no idea what had just happened, but both aliens stared at him as if he had passed some impossible test. The sphere vibrated faintly, humming like wind over a bottle's mouth. Somewhere deep inside, Elias felt an answering echo, half memory, half instinct, that sent chills down his spine. The smaller alien activated a panel on the wreck, sending a blue light beam shooting into the sky, piercing the pale green fracture still shimmering overhead. The light rippled outward as if striking something beyond the stars. A deep rumble rolled down from the heavens, shaking Ilias's bones. The larger alien tried to stand, pointing urgently toward the horizon. "They're coming." They came in silence, no roaring engines, no streaks of flame, just a vast dark shape blotting the stars as it slid into view. The ridgeline shrank beneath it, a ship the size of a mountain. The smaller alien's face twisted in fear, shoving Elias backward, motioning for retreat. Lights bloomed beneath the dark ship's circles within circles, glowing cold and precise. The beam from the wreck cut off. The circles began to descend. Ilias's heart sank. They weren't here to rescue anyone. The colossal ship touched down, the earth trembling under its weight. The villagers hid, watching as armored figures poured out Talian soldiers with weapons drawn, their eyes cold and unreadable. The smaller alien reached for Ilias's arm, whispering urgent words in broken common tongue. They needed to leave now. But Elias was rooted, curiosity and fear warring inside him. What did this mean? Who were these new arrivals? The soldiers seized the wreck, securing it with barriers of energy. The blue glow faded, replaced by harsh white floodlights that revealed the battered ship's surface and its strange occupants. From within the massive hull, more creatures emerged, some humanoid, others utterly alien, their forms shifting unnervingly. Ilias's mind raced as he pieced it together. The smaller alien and the larger one were refugees, hunted by the arriving force. This was a warship. Suddenly, alarms blared from the wreck. The sphere in Ilias's hand pulsed violently. The smaller alien grabbed it, pressing a sequence of commands. Warning, hostiles detected. The ground shook again. From the distant hills, roars echoed, a gathering army approaching fast. Elias had never felt more alive or more terrified. The villagers fled, scattering in every direction. Elias stayed, helping the aliens barricade the hatch, holding the sphere tightly. The warship's soldiers prepared for battle. Commands barked in harsh guttural tones, orders to sweep the valley and eliminate threats. Then the first clash, the predator from the hills returned, not alone this time, but with others of its kind. The aliens fired energy weapons, the beasts snarling and charging. Elias realized the sphere was more than a key, it was a beacon, a weapon, and a warning all at once. He looked to the larger alien, whose strength was fading, but whose gaze was fierce. "This isn't just a fight for survival," the alien said in broken common tongue. "It's a fight for our future and yours." The battle that followed was brutal. Aliens, beasts, and machines clashed in a cacophony of fire and fury beneath the fractured sky.
Ow.
And through it all, Elias held the sphere, feeling its power grow, waiting for the moment when the true story would begin. The war raged beneath the fractured sky, a violent dance of alien technology and primal ferocity. Elias, his muscles trembling, kept the glowing sphere clutched tightly in his hands, feeling the humming pulse resonate through his veins like the heartbeat of some ancient creature. The black and silver predators lunged again and again, their snarls mixing with the sharp crackle of energy weapons. Sparks flew as claws met shields, and screams echoed through the valley. But Elias's mind wasn't on the battle alone. His thoughts were torn between the creatures fighting for survival and the mysterious power humming within the sphere. Power he knew was both a blessing and a curse. The larger alien, whom Elias had come to think of as Kale, barked orders to the smaller one, whom Elias learned was named Sira. Together, they coordinated their dwindling forces, holding the line as best they could. Elias, Kale said, his voice ragged but commanding, "The sphere use it. It holds the key to ending this." "But how?" Elias asked, his breath ragged. Sira stepped forward, her hands trembling as she reached for the sphere. "It can activate the ship's defense systems, but only if we can survive long enough to reach the control chamber." The odds were against them. The invaders closed in, their heavy boots pounding the earth, their weapons emitting deadly beams that tore through anything in their path. Elias saw friends fall, both alien and human alike, and the weight of despair threatened to crush his spirit. Yet something inside him ignited a fierce resolve that would not be quelled. He tightened his grip on the sphere and pushed forward, breaking through the chaos toward the hatch of the crashed vessel. The air inside was thick with the scent of ozone and scorched metal, the hum of dormant machinery pulsing faintly. Kale and Sira followed closely, their wounds slowing them but not breaking their will.
Oh.
Inside the dim corridors, shadows danced as the ship's systems flickered to life. The sphere began to glow brighter, responding to Ilias's presence as if recognizing a kindred spirit. At last, they reached the control chamber, a vast room filled with consoles that blinked erratically. Elias placed the sphere into a recessed panel, and instantly the ship roared to life. Defensive turrets emerged from hidden compartments, targeting the approaching enemy forces. Energy shields shimmered into place, surrounding the wreck and holding the line against the invaders.
Outside.
The tide of battle shifted. Elias watched from a viewport as alien soldiers were cut down by precise bursts from the ship's automated defenses. The predators retreated, snarling but victorious, giving the survivors a chance to breathe. But victory came with a price. Kale collapsed, blood spilling from his side, his breathing shallow. Stira knelt beside him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We're not safe yet," she whispered, eyes locked on Elias. "The Empire will send more. We must warn the galaxy." Elias nodded, understanding now that this was only the beginning of a conflict that would span stars. Together, the unlikely trio prepared to broadcast a warning, a call for unity in the face of a darkness that threatened to consume them all. As the fractured sky pulsed with eerie light, Elias vowed that humanity would stand not as victims, but as warriors and storytellers, shaping a future forged in courage and defiance. The broadcast began as a simple message, but it carried the weight of a dying hope. Through the flickering signals of countless relay stations, Elias's voice echoed across the stars, a human speaking to a galaxy unprepared for the truth. "Listen well," he said, his tone steady despite the turmoil. "An empire falls, not just by blade or bomb, but by the courage of those who refuse to kneel. We stand together, or we fall divided." The message rippled through the council chambers, intercepted by warlords, traitors, diplomats, and rebels alike. It was a spark in the darkness, igniting fear, hope, and above all, action. Back on Norvale, the villagers who once feared the strange lights now looked skyward with new purpose. Elias was no longer just a blacksmith. He was a herald of change, a bridge between worlds. But as alliances formed and strategies took shape, the Empire's shadow lengthened. The great warship that had loomed like a mountain above the valley was only the first of many. Fleets mobilized, and the Council's once unshakable unity began to fracture under the strain. Within the halls of power, whispers turned to accusations. Some called for total annihilation of the rebellious systems. Others sought fragile peace talks. Amid the chaos, Elias and his allies navigated a labyrinth of political intrigue, betrayal, and impossible choices. Then came the revelation that shook the galaxy. The Empire's true weapon was not its fleets or armies, but a secret so devastating it threatened to unravel the fabric of reality itself. Elias learned that the green fracture in the sky was not a mere atmospheric anomaly, but a terra gateway to a dimension of pure energy and chaos. The Empire had sought to harness it, to bend it to their will. But the experiment had gone wrong, and the fracture was spreading, corrupting worlds and minds. The stakes had never been higher, to save their home, their people, and the galaxy. Elias and his ragtag band would have to face not just the Empire's soldiers, but the very forces of destruction unleashed by their hubris. In the crucible of war and wonder, humanity would reveal its true strength not through weapons or cunning alone, but through the indomitable spirit that had carried them from earthbound caves to the stars. And as the fractured sky burned brighter, Elias knew this was their moment. The moment when legends are born. The fractured sky glowed ominously overhead, casting an eerie light over the battered landscape. Elias stood at the edge of the ruined village, the weight of what lay ahead pressing heavily on his shoulders. Around him, the scattered survivors, humans and aliens alike, were rallying, preparing for the storm they knew was coming. Kel's wound had worsened. The larger alien leaned heavily on Syrah's support, their once proud posture now marked by exhaustion and pain. Despite this, their resolve never wavered. They were united by a purpose far greater than themselves: survival, freedom, and the hope of a new future. The council was fractured, and whispers of betrayal echoed through its chambers. Some sought to exploit the fracture in the sky for power, others to seal it at any cost, even if it meant sacrifice on an unimaginable scale. Elias knew that words alone would not be enough to unite such divided wills. Action was needed, swift, decisive, and bold. The secret of the fracture was worse than anyone feared. The Empire's experiments had torn open a gateway to a dimension of pure energy, a chaotic realm that defied physics and sanity. It was a realm where time folded in on itself, and the laws of reality bent like glass. Each day the tier grew wider, threatening to swallow entire star systems into oblivion. The Empire's arrogance had doomed them all, but humanity had something no other species possessed: a chaotic resilience.
I am born from millennia of survival against impossible odds.
Elias stood before the battered communication array, transmitting a rallying cry across the galaxy. "We don't just fight for ourselves," he said, voice steady despite the storm raging in his heart. "We fight for every soul trapped in this shadow, for every star yet to shine." His words ignited flames of rebellion in hidden corners of the galaxy. Pirates, diplomats, warriors, and scholars began answering the call. Alliances once deemed impossible were forged in the crucible of necessity. Yet with every victory came sacrifice. In a daring raid on an Imperial supply convoy, Elias's small band lost more than they could afford. Syrah was gravely injured, her strength fading as the fracture's corruption seeped into her veins. Kale, ever the warrior, refused to leave her side. "She carries the future," he whispered, gripping Ilias's arm with surprising strength. "We must not fail." The fractured sky roared above, a cosmic storm signaling the inevitable convergence of fate. The final battle was coming, a clash that would decide not only who ruled the stars, but whether the stars would survive at all. Elias looked up, determination burning in his eyes. "Then we fight," he said, voice resolute, "for those who cannot." And so, beneath the fractured sky, humanity's legend was written in fire and light. The fractured sky pulsed like a living wound, its eerie glow casting long shadows over the makeshift camp where humans and aliens had gathered. The once divided factions now stood shoulder to shoulder, bound by a shared enemy and a desperate hope. Elias moved through the crowd, his eyes burning with resolve. The weight of countless lives rested on his shoulders, but his spirit was unbroken. He had become more than a blacksmith from a quiet village. He was a beacon in the darkness, a symbol of defiance against a galaxy's unraveling. Syrah lay in the medical tent, her breaths shallow but steady. The corruption from the fracture had seeped into her veins, and the alien medics worked tirelessly to stave off its deadly advance. Kale sat by her side, his strength waning, but his will as fierce as ever. Outside, the ground trembled beneath the approach of the Empire's fleet. Ships blotted out the stars, their weapons primed for annihilation, but the defenders were ready. The fractured sky was both their curse and their shield, its unstable energy fueling the desperate gambit to end the Empire's reign. Elias gathered his allies. "This ends now," he declared. "We face the darkness head-on. Not as victims, but as warriors. The future is ours to forge." The battle erupted with a fury that shook the heavens. Energy beams sliced through the air, and the cries of combatants echoed across the valleys. The fractured sky thundered above, a cosmic storm feeding the chaos below. In the heart of the conflict, Elias led a daring assault on the Empire's flagship, aiming to sever the command that fueled the destruction. Inside the labyrinthine corridors, he faced enemies bred for war and merciless cunning. But it was not brute force that turned the tide. It was the human gift for cunning the lies, the feints, the deception woven into every step. The Empire, unaccustomed to deceit, faltered as Elias manipulated their expectations, turning their strength against them. At last, he reached the command core, where the fracture's energy was harnessed. With a surge of courage, Elias activated the sphere's hidden power, unraveling the energy rift and collapsing the gateway. The shattered sky flickered, then began to heal. Outside, the Empire's fleet faltered, their grip on power broken. The survivors fled into the dark expanse, their empire crumbling beneath them. Elias emerged, battered but victorious. Around him, allies cheered, tears of relief mingling with the ash of battle. Syrah, though weakened, smiled faintly. "You did it," she whispered. Kale clasped Ilias's shoulder. "Human, you changed everything." The fractured sky faded into a calm night, stars shining once more, and humanity stood at the dawn of a new era, testament to resilience, to the power of stories told and lies told well, and to a spirit that refused to be broken. As the calm settled over the battlefield, the survivors gathered beneath the no-clear sky, eyes lifted to the stars that had once seemed so distant, so unreachable. The fractured, the cosmic wound that had threatened to swallow entire worlds had been sealed. But its scars would remain in their hearts and memories. Elias stood among them, his face streaked with soot and sweat, yet illuminated by a quiet hope. Around him, humans and aliens shared stories of loss and courage, their voices weaving a tapestry of unity forged in fire. Syrah's condition stabilized, her strength slowly returning as the alien medics worked tirelessly. She often caught Ilias's gaze, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, one forged through hardship and shared destiny. Kale, though weakened, was already speaking to the council emissaries, advocating for a new alliance, one built on trust, cooperation, and mutual respect. The old rivalries, the suspicion, and fear would not vanish overnight, but the first steps had been taken. News of the victory spread across star systems. The Empire's grip loosened, its remnants fractured and scattered like dust on the cosmic wind. Rebellions sparked in distant worlds, inspired by the tale of a human blacksmith and his alien comrades, who dared to stand against the darkness. Yet Elias knew the journey was far from over. The fracture had been sealed, but the forces it had unleashed were restless. Shadows lingered at the edges of the galaxy, and new threats would arise. But humanity was ready, not because of superior technology or strength, but because of something far more enduring: the ability to adapt, to deceive when needed, to endure pain, and still find hope. Under the vast, starry sky, Elias lifted his gaze and smiled. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers alike. And now, humanity had carved its place among the stars, not as victims, but as legends. Years passed, and the galaxy slowly transformed. The scars left by the fracture and the Empire's fall served as solemn reminders of the cost of arrogance and war. Yet from the ashes rose a fragile peace, woven by unlikely friendships and shared trials. Elias, once a simple blacksmith, became a symbol not of war, but of hope. His story spread through starports and space stations, whispered in taverns, and recited in halls of power. Children of many worlds dreamed of the human who had faced impossible odds and changed the course of history. Syrah recovered fully, her spirit as fierce as ever. She and Elias remained close, their bond forged in hardship and triumph. Together with Kale and others, they helped build a new galactic council, one that valued every voice, every culture, and every story. But peace was never permanent. New challenges arose from the fringes of explored space. Ancient technologies awakening, strange signals from beyond known dimensions, and factions seeking to exploit the galaxy's fragile harmony. Still, humanity stood ready, armed not just with weapons, but with wit, courage, and the unyielding will to survive. Elias often looked to the stars, remembering the night the sky shattered, and the light that had changed everything. He knew that as long as the stars shone, there would always be stories to tell, battles to fight, and hope to hold on to. For in the end, it was not power or machines that shaped the galaxy, it was the spirit of those brave enough to stand when the universe tried to break them. And humanity would never break. In a universe vast and indifferent, where empires rise and fall like tides, it was a human born of simple fires and steel who stood tall against the darkness. not because of weapons or strength alone, but because of a spirit unyielding, a heart that refused to surrender. They said humanity was weak. They said we were insignificant. But when the sky shattered and hope seemed lost, it was humanity's courage, cunning, and unbreakable will that changed everything. This is not just a story of survival. It is a story of what it means to be human. To face impossible odds, to fight with every breath, to rise from the ashes, and to write legends in the stars. The galaxy will remember that night the fractured sky healed, not from power or fear, but from the truth that even in the darkest moments, hope can burn brighter than any star. And as long as there are those who dare to dream, to fight, and to believe, humanity will never be broken.